Hi everyone, my name's George, and in this video I'm going to show you how I aquascaped this Fluval Flex non-CO2 aquascape for my Betta fish. His name's Nimrod. So a full step-by-step tutorial video. Really hope you enjoy this one, especially suitable for beginners and those with less experience with planted aquarium aquascapes. I'll take you through the whole process, what materials I'm using, the plants I'm using, why I'm using them, and hopefully you can learn something, maybe be inspired, and hopefully it shows you guys that planted tanks don't have to be overly complicated or expensive. You can achieve quite a beautiful looking aquascape relatively easily with relatively few materials. So let's run through the equipment to start with. This is the Fluval Flex 57 litres if you're buying it in Europe, or the 15 US gallon version. It's quite a unique aquarium. It has a bow front, and rather than bowing from kind of right to left, it bows from bottom to top. So a little bit different to usual bow front aquariums. It does have a built-in filtration and space for a heater in the back. It doesn't come supplied with a heater, so you have to buy that as an extra, but the filtration is very good. It comes with a sponge, biological and carbon. The LED lighting is almost 11 watts, which is absolutely fine to grow our easy category plants. These are all Tropica aquarium plants, all from that easy category. If you weren't aware, Tropica produce 3 main brackets of plants ranging from easy to medium to advanced. These are all easy, which means they should grow quite well in low levels of light and no CO2 injection required. So that's what we're running in here. I've actually got the Fluval cabinet as well, so the whole thing I think looks really effective, quite stylish considering its fairly low price point. Tommy's here. Hello Tommy. So for those that don't know, I've got a puppy called Tommy. He's a very good boy, and he's been in quite a few of my videos, haven't you? It has I think it's a 300 litres per hour pump, which is giving us around 6 times turnover. We have got a Betta fish in there, and they don't tend to do so well in high levels of flow, although it is a short finned variety, so he's absolutely fine in this aquarium. I have removed the supplied nozzles from the filter outlet. Now what that does, it makes the flow more laminar rather than more direct. So actually we're not getting so much turbulence, which is fine for the Betta. First thing we do is install the substrate. I'm using Tropica plant soil in here. This is a great product. I've been using it for dozens of aquascapes over the last few years. Proven performer. Helps to feed the plant roots, creates a great home for beneficial bacteria, helps to take in nutrients from the actual water and lock them into the soil, lowers the pH and hardness slightly, doesn't need pre-rinsing, and it's just a really great product for promoting an overall healthy aquarium and promoting plant growth as well. I've used about 6 litres in here, so you can either buy 2-3 litre bags, or you could buy a 9 litre bag and then obviously use 2/3 of it. What you can do, you can have it shallower at the front and slightly deeper at the back. This can help achieve a sense of depth, although I've got it relatively flat in here. There is actually a kind of a water inlet area at the bottom of the filter unit, so I was quite careful not to obviously cover that with the soil. Another top tip is to actually plant into the soil while it's dry. What I used to do is actually fill slightly above the soil and then plant into that wet soil. It's a method that a lot of people use and it works, but I find by planting into the dry soil, it helps to anchor those plants more effectively and helps to prevent them from floating once we do eventually fill with water. So a bit of a tip for you there, and shout out to my great friend Yuri's for giving me that tip, and I've never planted into wet soil since. So now we've installed our soil, the next step is to install our hardscape, or the wood and rocks. So I'm using a couple of pieces of driftwood here, and I'm taking care to position them to give the best visual balance that I can. We can use the rule of thirds, so if we split the aquarium into 3 equal sections and roughly align the hardscape up with those, we create naturally a nice aesthetic balance. And I've done a similar thing with the stones here. These are just small pieces of Frodo stone, using an odd number, using 3 stones here as you can see, 2 together and then 1 offset, and this again creates a nice aesthetic balance. Now it's time to plant. So what I like to do is split the aquascape into foreground, midground and background, and then finally we have our epiphyte plants, which are plants that attach to the decor or the hardscape. Starting off with preparation, it's a really good idea to spend some time to prepare the plants effectively. In the foreground we've got Helanthrium tenellum, commonly known as dwarf chainsword and used to be known as Echinodorus tenalis. This is a relatively easy foreground carpeting plant. So to prepare it, we're using the Tropica 1-2 grow range, which are tissue culture grown in laboratories, which mean they're guaranteed to be free from algae, pesticides, snails and disease. And they represent great value for money because you get so many tiny little plants in that pot. We simply remove the plant from the pot and then divide it up into as many portions as we can. And this gives us really economical coverage. So you can plant a relatively large tank with relatively few pots of the Tropica 1-2 grow range. After some time in good conditions, which hopefully we'll be achieving with this aquarium, the plant will send out runners and then new leaves will protrude and eventually will form a solid lawn effect, which can look really effective. Moving on to our mid-ground plants, we're using Cryptocorini Wenditii tropica. This is a beautiful crypt that will eventually turn like a green, dark green brown colour. The leaves will turn into like a hammered appearance as well. All the plants here, apart from the 1-2 grow, have actually been grown out of water, so they will physically change their appearance once they adapt to their underwater growth. But the great thing about crypts is that they don't need a lot of light, so they're perfect for this aquarium. They're slow growing, so they're low maintenance. You can experience what we call crypt melt, which is the plant basically struggling to adapt to its new environment. It will shed its leaf, but then if it's got a healthy rootstock, it will grow new leaves which are adapted to their new environment, so it's no problem. This has been running for a couple of weeks now and there's no sign of any die-off, so touch wood, we're okay. To prepare our crypts, we simply remove them from their pot, remove the mineral wool, which is the material that the plant is growing in, and then we can divide that plant mass. There's quite a big kind of chunk of different plants all added together within this mineral wool. We can split that up into different portions, and then this gives us better coverage. Also, I like to trim the roots off, and then this allows for easier planting with our tweezers and also stimulates new root growth, which is a good thing. Moving on to our background plants, we've got my favourite plant name of all time, Hygrophila Sienensis 53B, just rolls off the tongue so well. A easy, fast growing stem plant, which is perfect for the background. When you buy it from the store, it's usually very tall, so you've got an instant impact for the background. It's very fast growing, so it helps to outcompete nutrients with algae. So for those that don't know, the more plants we have and the healthier those plants are and the faster grown those plants are, the less chance of algae we get. So great backdrop plant. Maybe a little bit too green. I am thinking of putting a red stem plant in the back. Let me know what you think in the comments. Part of me is like, well, Nimrod's red. We do have enough colour in there with Nimrod, but it might be nice to see some colourful plants in there as well. So let me know what you think in the comments and let me know a species that you might be thinking of. Last but not least, we have our epiphyte plant. So these are plants that like to be attached to decor or wood and rock. They have a rhizome, which is the fleshy part of the plant where the leaves protrude from. This needs to be exposed to circulating water. If this is buried in the substrate, it goes what we call anaerobic, which means lack of oxygen, and then it can rot and die and then cause algae and other trouble. So definitely need to attach our epiphyte plants to the wooden rocks. In this case, we're using Anubias petite, which is a small variety of Anubias nana, and I've just literally wedged it in between the wood and the rocks. And this is enough just to keep it secure until those roots creep along and actually secures itself. And I've done exactly the same thing with the Java fern or Microsorum terapus. Many of you may have heard of Java fern, a very easy, adaptable plant which will grow very well in high light, low light, CO2 injection, non-CO2 injection. This is the regular variety of Java fern. There are different varieties, trident fern, winterlove, etc. And in my experience, this is the easiest. Some varieties like the trident fern, in my experience, tends to not do so well in non-CO2 tanks, so do bear this in mind. If you do want to grow trident fern, you might need to inject CO2, maybe have a little bit more lighting, but this should be absolutely fine for this setup. So that's the planting complete. Now let's talk about maintenance and some other things as well. An aquascape will only look good if it's maintained appropriately. If you don't maintain it enough, it will soon become covered in algae, the glass will get dirty. So you've spent the money on the plants, the hardscape, the soil or the equipment, etc. You spent the time setting it all up and making it look quite pretty. So please do spend the time maintaining it. It's very easy to be neglectful and just put it off another day and put it off another day. But unless we do that regular preventative maintenance, then you will get issues. Trust me, it happens to me all of the time. By preventative maintenance, what I mean is addressing issues before they occur. So doing plenty of water changes, making sure those water changes are large enough, giving the plants appropriate amount of liquid fertilizer at appropriate frequencies. So in this case we're using Tropica Premium Nutrition, and I just do 1 squirt every day, and I normally do it at the same time as I feed Nimrod, so 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak, so I don't forget. And water changes. If I can recommend anything, it's do water changes. How much you do and how frequently you do depends on the system. To put it very simply, the higher energy the system, so the more light it has, the more plant growth, the more CO2, higher everything is, higher levels of everything, every metabolic process, every kind of biological process, the more water changes we need to do. All these processes create waste organics. If these waste organics build to excess, the net result is usually algae. So to dilute those waste organics, we need to do the water changes. Also, in a new setup, the soil tends to leach nutrients, so it's a really good idea to do the water changes to limit those nutrients, which again will help prevent algae. As an example, in this setup, I was doing at least 50% water change every other day. You can probably do more if you like. I used to do them every day, but I don't really have the time these days, unfortunately. It sounds like a lot of work for the first couple of weeks, it is, but it's probably less work than having to, in the long term, address lots of algae issues. Just to reiterate, do your water changes, do them more frequently and larger at the beginning of the aquascape's life. Trust me, it really does help prevent algae. So at the moment, this is now 2 weeks old. I am doing 2 50% water changes a week, which is absolutely fine. There's a bit of a myth that says, oh, you should only change 10 or 25% because it causes lots of pH swings and it stresses the fish out, etc. This is not correct. The fish actually prefer a larger water change in general. If you think about where they come from in nature, if they come from rivers or streams, you know, it's going through thousands of % water change every second. And like I said, it just helps dilute these waste organics, helps to prevent algae, keeps the system fresh, promotes plant growth as well. You know, the fresh water will have added nutrients in it, which is a good thing for the plants. And even if your tap water is hard or has nitrates and phosphates, this is no problem for a planted tank like this. The plants will happily use that hard water. Harder water actually has more things like calcium and magnesium, which plants need. The nitrates and phosphates are plant food as well. So please don't be afraid to just use your standard tap water. Even if it's soft, hard, in a regular planted aquarium with regular kind of captive bred fish, your tap water is absolutely fine. Another top tip to helping to prevent algae is to plant very heavily. You've seen how many plants I've put in here. I think I used 2 or 3 pots of the Tropica 1-2 Grow Helianthemum Telulum in the foreground. Used 3 pots of the Cryptocorini Wednesday Tropica in the midground. Used 3 pots of the Hygrophila Coriambosa 53B in the background. 1 pot of the Microsorum Terapus or the Java Fern. And I think 3 pots of the Anubias Petite. 60 or 70 pounds, or that's what, about 100 US dollars in plants. Sounds like a lot of money potentially, but if you want a heavily planted tank, if you want a nice aquascape and you want it to be algae free and lush and beautiful, then please do invest in that high amount of planting to start with. And try to make sure those plants are high quality. Strike up a relationship with your store owner, find out when the next shipment of plants come in, and then buy them as soon as they come in if you can, because they're going to be at their freshest from the nurseries, they're going to be at their healthiest. Many stores don't keep their plants in great conditions and the plants are slowly in decline, whereas if you buy them straight away as fresh as you can be, then you'll get a much better chance of success. There are a few stores, aquascaping specialist stores, which do keep their plants in appropriate conditions. They have good lighting, good CO2. Some even keep them hydroponically, which means they're growing like they are in the greenhouses. If you can get hold of the plants from these people, these aquascaping specialists, then do consider doing that, and then you'll be guaranteed to get the healthiest plants possible. So other technical things to consider, I am running a 8-hour photo period, which means the lights are on for 8 hours a day. I'm using a plug-in timer to achieve that. In this case, it's on at 2 PM and it goes up to 10 PM. It's entirely up to you how you choose your timing. I'm using a 100 watt heater, and this is a special compartment in the background here for the heater. And this is set to 77 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 degrees Celsius. which is ideal for Nimrod, my Betta. So this is going to grow in over the next few weeks. It's 2 weeks old, as I've said already, and the background stem plants, the hygrophila, is almost reaching the surface already. The epiphyte plants are all very low light tolerant, so it's a really good idea in particular to plant the anubias in the shade, otherwise it can get covered in algae. The crypts will be absolutely fine in low levels of light. The biggest trouble we may have is growing this carpet of Helanthrium tenellum. So I'm not yet seeing any real signs of growth, but I'm not seeing it die off either. So I'll keep you updated and we'll see how that grows in the longer term. Okay guys, that wraps it up for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Something a bit different, very beginner friendly. Hopefully some newcomers to the channel might benefit from this. It's by no means one of my kind of advanced aquascapes. It's not my most creative aquascape, but it's not designed to be that. It's designed to hopefully be a nice introduction to aquascaping for beginners, for those with less experience and maybe less budget. The principles of aquascaping you can apply to any level of aquascape. You know, think about good materials to start with. We've got a nice soil, we've got good hardscape, we've got a nice aquarium and cabinet, there's good filtration, the lighting's okay. And then think about the actual composition of the aquascape as well, you know, focal points by using a rule of thirds potentially. Think about your foreground, midground, background, and then any plants that you want to attach to your decor, the epiphyte plants. And then think about maintenance. This is really important. I am tempted to put a different plant in there. I do find the hygrophila in the background a little bit too kind of high impact, so I'm thinking of maybe taking some of it out and maybe putting a finer leaf plant in there. Let me know in the comments what you think, maybe a hint of red or something similar. So I'm going to sign off there guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you do enjoy this video, please hit that thumbs up button, that'd be really appreciated. Leave me a comment, what other plants would you like to see in here? And did you enjoy this kind of video? Something going back to basics, getting people started on their aquascaping journey. This is really important. So thanks again for watching, I really appreciate it. You take care, keep on scaping. Cheerio.